Hello again. This particular project has one item of considerable interest that I've not covered before, and there's some other stuff that I have that I'll show you again, since every iteration brings out different details. Best way to put it. Anyway, it's a really nice pipe, a collectible pipe, an Everson. And the problem is obvious. It was dropped or sat on or something that snapped the shank from the bowl. And what makes it unusual and tricky to fix properly is that there was a previous attempt to glue this together using a type of cement or glue that did not hold. And now you see the black residue instead of whitish blonde wood there. We can't leave that in place. It'll peel off like a band-aid, and we've got to remove it completely so that the second attempt at gluing will do the trick. It'll stay put. And the main bit of interest here from a repairman's perspective is how to get the old glue off without creating a problem at the same time. And by that I mean usually what people think of as a solution to something like this is a wire brush or a little scraper, even a 3M bristle brush maybe. And the problem with that kind of thing is it won't come off evenly. The black stuff will not come off evenly when you brush it like that, so that when the raw wood is exposed, that'll begin to erode while you're still scrubbing away, wire brushing away, or whatever you're doing on the black stuff. And that'll change the contour of the face, the broken off face, in a different pattern on both halves, so that when it's time to put them back together, it doesn't quite fit anymore because they were morphed. The shapes were changed during the old glue removal process. So the solution is both intuitive and kind of strange at the same time. A tiny razor sharp scraper. And yeah, you recognize this from something a year or two ago. I did one about how to remove carbon from the rim of a pipe, and it's really sharp. It'll do that. Well, occasionally I use the tip of it as a tiny chisel, and because the one side has a slight curve, the way you use this thing is to ever so slightly, you kind of go in and then up just a tiny bit, and it's only about 1/2 millimeter wide at the very tip. Now I can't do this by looking through this camera's viewfinder. I can only do it with a head, like a jeweler's headpiece on, because it's that critical. But what I'm going to do, and you'll just have to take my word for it, is slowly push this along and peel little tiny bits and flakes of the black stuff off of there until it's as clean as we can get it, and then do the other side just the same way. Now I did a kind of a test run, and there are places where this black glue is adhered like a demon, and other places that it has been pulled loose in a patch, and I assume that's from the breaking, the second parting of the halves here, pulled some patches loose that were ready to come away, but others are still stuck on there pretty good. So now it's tedious, but worth it. Now if this were an inexpensive pipe and you just wanted to get it back together again, sure, use a wire brush or a 3M bristle brush and just buzz on it and jam it back together. It'll smoke just fine, nobody cares. Well, this pipe is worth quite a lot of money, and it's a very special piece to its owner and getting it back to a new condition is part of the job here. That's what we're shooting for. Now, whether or not after it's been re-glued we're going to put stainless steel tubing in this one depends on some geometry stuff that I'm not able to calculate in advance. It's a very close call whether we can do that or want to do that. So I'll talk more about that when the time arrives. And part B is the same pipe. As long as it's in the garage, so to speak, the owner would like a new stem made. And this one has a pinhole, and I'm not sure how much any of this shows up on camera, but there's a hole through to the airway on the bottom up here. And normally you can patch that, but in this particular case, the area there is down to very thin, like, oh gosh. Yeah, there we go. 0.120 inches thick. And that means that there's not enough material to support any sort of patch. It wouldn't work. We're going to have to cut a new stem. Got some trusty rod stock here. So I'll be catching up from time to time during this project with some commentary that might or might not, or might be interesting to you, and leave off the parts that are not interesting. They're just like watching grass grow. So there you have it. Can't think of anything else offhand. You know what I'm up to. I'm now going to go set to getting the black off of here, and we'll turn the camera back on when I'm either encounter something, either finish doing that successfully or encounter something interesting that requires further consideration. So there we go. Back in a minute. Okay, welcome back. We've managed to get halfway done here. I thought I'd get you caught up. The technique, as it turned out, was to do as I described, with the little lifting, the little get under it and then peel it up motion. And then after you do the entire surface that way, you end up with a whole bunch of little tags of glue that you could actually take tweezers and pull them off, but I thought we might have a little better solution. So after going over it with this little guy and had a bunch of little tags, stainless steel, I believe it's stainless, a brush that's quite stiff and quite sharp, and then to a minimal amount, just enough to get it done, you take off the little tags that are left behind, and then resume with this, because it would expose the spots that were truly adhered. And a few iterations of that, and we're pretty much there. The sharpness and detail has been retained. It's 95+% clear of the old glue. The surface has not been polished in the sense of sealed in any way that would affect the gluing that we're about to do. And so that's how that was done. I'm now going to finish up on the other half. There should be no difference in technique there. One word of mild warning: I would not use a brass brush for this kind of a thing. First of all, by its nature, brass is a little softer, and it's going to polish the wood more than the sharp steel will. And it also, those of you who've used brass, it's wonderful for certain things, but others you don't want to use brass because it leaves a sheen, a metal deposit behind. And if you take a piece of wood and scrub it with this, it's going to turn a light coppery gold color because there's some transfer of the metal to the wood. And I do not know for sure that that would affect the glue joint, but I don't feel in the mood to take a risk. Why do that at all? Why go there when a better solution is at hand? So I'd recommend sticking with stainless steel and avoiding brass. And I'll finish up this half, and then we'll get into the actual gluing process. And how much of the making of the stem I'll cover, I don't know yet. It'll just depend as I go along. When we bump up against an interesting point that I may not have discussed in an earlier video, because there's been a number of stems made to this point in time. So that's it, and I'll go do this and be back in a minute.